During a recent interview, MAGA Republican Congressman and conspiracy theorist Jim Jordan was reduced to an awkward, stammering, visibly uncomfortable wreck when a CNN host confronted him about the fact that he only seems to accept the outcome of free and fair elections when Republicans win. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got one clip to look at here, and it's about 3 minutes long. Jim Jordan, MAGA Republican conspiracy theorist, co-conspirator in Donald Trump's various sundry schemes to steal the 2020 election, is now really happy with the state of elections, and the 2024 election is free and fair and perfect. But that's because Donald Trump won. And Dana Bash on CNN confronted Jim Jordan about the incongruity here. Oh, okay, well, when you guys lose, then everything is shady and suspect, and we have questions that really need to be answered. Oh, but you win? Oh, well, then everything's fine, perfectly fine. Let's not worry about it. I want you to see this exchange because you can tell Jim Jordan is really uncomfortable with being confronted about this fact, this hypocrisy, this double standard on live TV.
But voting fraud this time, it seems to me that Republicans claim voting fraud and election integrity when you lose and not when you win.
No, I mean, again, as I said before, this election, I think, was the greatest political comeback we've ever seen. I mean, he did something that even Teddy Roosevelt couldn't do, for goodness sake. And the country.
But you think it was a free and fair election?
No. This election, you just interviewed the Latino, restaurant owner or a restaurant worker, and he said he was tired of all the woke stuff. This election was real simple. You had back-to-back administrations. We got something we very seldom get in American history, American politics. Back-to-back administrations now running for the top job, and people could do a direct comparison. And they said, we like what we had under President Trump versus.
But last time around,
we like the safe streets versus the record
last
crime.
time around, your leader claimed that there were problems with
secure
fraud.
Border versus the open border.
Right, those are policies.
That's what this election was about.
That's totally fair. But last time around, it wasn't so much about the policy differences or the personality differences. There were false claims about election fraud when Donald Trump lost. This time, Donald Trump won, and you think the election was free and fair. Do you see there's a little bit of a...
No, I think the Democrats got to ask, why did we go from getting 81 million to getting 70 million? What happened to those 10 million people? Maybe they needed. Maybe it's not smart to run an election where you have no vision, no record to run on.
Do you believe
that
the 2024 election was free and fair?
I do.
And why was it different from 2020 when he lost? Is that the only difference?
No, there were concerns about 2020 with all the mail-in voting that happened. You know, Pennsylvania had like 2-point-something million mail-in ballots come in without any signature verification, which was required under Pennsylvania statute. So there were all kinds of concerns with how the 2020 election was carried out. But
there was absolutely
the biggest question Democrats need to be asking: what happened to the 10 million voters that Joe Biden got that didn't come out for Kamala Harris? A bunch of them. President Trump's numbers were right up where they were in 2020, but the Democrats were much lower. I think it's because they had no vision, no record to run on, and they just wanted to call everyone names. Turns out when you tell people, oh, you're fascist, racist, deplorable, garbage, they don't like that. And then when you use lawfare to go after their candidate, they don't like that either.
Well,
that's why they came out. So on top of the economy, on top of the price of gas, on top of the inflation, that's why they voted for President Trump.
We're out of time. I just want to say, for the record, that there was no evidence of widespread fraud in 2020. It went through many different court cases. And I do think the name calling,
that's what I was concerned about.
The name calling was very strong on the Republican side of the aisle from the former president, and you know that. So thank you for being here.
So, again, a couple of things. Note how uncomfortable he was. Again, just constantly interrupting, going off on non sequiturs. He did not want to be held to the fact that there is a total asymmetry in terms of how and when Republicans accept the outcome of elections. Now, what's funny is there's mail-in voting in 2024. A lot of mail-in voting. As a matter of fact, Republicans employed mail-in voting much more in 2024 than in 2020. And that's a consequence of Republicans, including Trump, changing their tune on mail-in voting. In 2020, Trump, in advance of the election, was demonizing mail-in voting, saying, don't do mail-in voting. It's susceptible to fraud and, all sorts of shenaniganry. Vote in person. Well, when you reduce the number of options or the number of means by which your supporters have to vote, as a natural consequence, you're going to see lower turnout, right? Or potentially not maximize the turnout at your disposal. Democrats, on the other hand, were like, hell yeah, if mail-in voting, absentee voting, early voting, if all these are available, use whatever legal disposal or legal means you have at your disposal. That's the difference. But mail-in voting in 2020 is wrong, but not in 2024. Again, the outcome is different. I should also say, real quick, as a fact check, Jim Jordan is lying about the situation in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania statute doesn't require that people have their ballots tossed out because of signature verification. Signature verification was a component, but the question was, okay, well, if the signatures don't quite match, can you simply use that as a basis to toss the ballots? And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, joined by 2 Republican appointees to that court, wasn't just a partisan basis. 2 Republicans on the court sided with the Democrats as well. They said, no, nothing in Pennsylvania's federal law requires that county election officials toss out ballots if there's an incongruence on the signature verification. That can't be the sole basis, especially because, again, as people have pointed out, your signature can change over time. Electronic signatures tend to be different from, physical signatures with pen or pencil. That can't be the only basis you toss votes. And that's what Jim Jordan's upset about. He wanted to use any possible means to undermine President Biden's victory. He's misrepresenting the truth here. And in terms of the concerns, well, the reason that people had concerns, Jim, is because you, your cult leader, and your party were telling people that they should be concerned. It's so ridiculous. It's like we could play that game in any. Democrats could be doing that right now. That's what Jim Jordan. He's either too stupid to recognize or smart enough to recognize it, but will never acknowledge that if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wanted to, they could also have been fomenting questions in advance of the election, during the election, and after the election about the integrity of the election. They could have also been saying, stuff's not adding up here. Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that? Why is a guy who's never won the popular vote in 2016 or 2020 now magically ahead? There must be shenanigans afoot. But they didn't do that. See, when you create questions in people and then cite the very questions you create as a basis for something's illegitimacy, it's a racket. It's a circular loop. It's a circular argument. I have questions about the election. You should have questions about the election. Hey, why are there questions about the election? Well, it's because people have questions about the election. Ergo, we can question the election. That's the game that Republicans play. Democrats don't play that game, certainly not to the same extent. As a matter of fact, as we know, Vice President Harris formally conceded to Donald Trump, just like Hillary Clinton did, privately with a phone call and then a public concession speech. Again, just like Hillary Clinton did. Vice President Harris hasn't schemed to toss out the votes or sue her way into the White House or to foment an insurrection. President Biden has already said that he has reached out to Donald Trump, accepted the outcome of the election, invited Donald Trump to the White House, and began the preparations for a peaceful transfer of power. The asymmetry is staggering. The moral superiority of Democratic politicians is absolutely unquestioned because they accept the results of elections even when they lose. Republicans don't. And that's why Jim Jordan was so uncomfortable there. It's so interesting to me that this is the standard. This is just the standard. Heads I win, tails you lose. That's the Republican standard. And Democrats just don't play that game. Now, I do think that he made one good point, which is what the hell happened to the 10 million voters who voted for President Biden and gave him 81 million votes in 2020, whereas Vice President Harris only has 71 million votes. And this is something that Democrats really need to look in the mirror on and ask ourselves some question. What did we miss in our strategy? What did we get wrong? Was it just the anti-incumbency sentiment, which was basically destroying every incumbent government with national elections across the world, including, by the way, the United Kingdom, which was run by a conservative government? I think that sort of introspection is necessary, to be sure. But I'll say this. The 2024 election was free and fair. There's no evidence that it was anything else. Donald Trump won this election free and fair. It seems like there was just an anti-incumbency surge. He benefited, yes, from the double standard. There's no doubt about it. But there was nothing illegitimate about this election, just like in 2020. President Biden won fair and square. He just kicked Donald Trump's ass. And unlike Republicans, we have the integrity to accept the outcome, even though it sucks. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.